want to welcome Steve Hogler from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. I'm going to leave it to him to do a quick intro for you, but he's going to be giving us an overview of the Green Bay Muskie Management Program that we've got going on here right now, where we've come from, where we're at today, and what the future holds for our world-class fishery. So everybody please give a warm Titletown welcome to Steve Hogler.
Thanks for the invitation. I certainly appreciate the invite to come and speak before you tonight. And before I go any further, I'd certainly like to thank you as a club for all the support you've given the Green Bay Muskie program since even before the inception of the program in 1989. I certainly appreciate it, and all the other anglers of the state that allow us to fish muskie appreciate all the hard work that you guys have put into this program. So thank you very much. As it was mentioned, my name is Steve Hogler. I'm the WDNR Fisheries Biologist stationed here in Green Bay. I cover the inland waters of Manitowoc and Brown counties, but more interestingly, especially for those sitting in this room, I also manage the walleye and muskie programs on Green Bay. So what I'm going to do tonight is just give a little brief update of where we are, focusing on our 2018 data collection, and I will have a little update at the end. I didn't know Robert was coming, so I'm going to steal some of his talk, but be nice to him anyway. As I mentioned, what I'm going to speak about tonight are our muskie assessments, especially those in 2018 on the Fox River. I'm going to give an update on propagation and stocking, and then talk briefly at the end about some of the cooperative studies that we're working with UW-Stevens Point and UW-GB. In general, we do our assessments on muskie on the Fox River in spring and fall. We time these surveys to take advantage of when we know fish are congregated and we can get our hands on a lot of muskie in a short period of time. The spring, of course, is our fight net surveys. We use it for two reasons. We use it to collect biological information about the fish, and we also use it to collect eggs that ultimately get raised and stocked back here in Green Bay. Fall electrofishing is done in conjunction with our annual Walleye Young of the Year assessment. We shot both sides of the Fox River from the bay all the way up to the dam and to pier. We shot in the lower mile of the Oconto, Peshtigo, and Menominee rivers at all as well. We're looking for walleye and muskie in those surveys. Once in a while, our biologist in Peshtigo, Tammy Pioli, is able to conduct the spring muskie survey. She conducts these every 5 or 6 years or so. She targets the Menominee and the Peshtigo River. The Menominee River was done 2 or 3 years ago. She has hoped to do a spring muskie survey on the Peshtigo River last year, but the conditions didn't allow that. So she is all geared up and ready to go this spring, so we're hoping that we have a more favorable spring runoff, but given the current conditions, that may not happen again this year, but let's hope for the best. And then our final assessment tool for muskie and all the other game fish in Green Bay is our krill survey. We have approximately 4 krill clerks that work on Green Bay. There's 1 in Menominee, there's 2 in Green Bay, and there's 1 in Sturgeon Bay that cover portions of Green Bay. They talk to anglers, see what they're catching, and collect biological information on those fish. Muskie is one of the species that they've been instructed to gather as much information on as they can. 2018 was a pretty good muskie year for us in the spring. Usually we set 4 nets for 2 nights and we get all the fish we need. This past spring we did set nets for 2 weeks, 2 days for 2 weeks, over the course of 2 weeks, to try to get fish for Robert Shefford to tag. So we set those when the water temperature was a little cooler, 50, 55 degrees. He was able to get the 10 fish he needed in 1 night, so he was very happy with us there. And then the next week we set our 4 nets in 4 locations, fished them for 2 nights, and we collected almost 77 muskie, 6.4 fish per net night. So we had a pretty good catch rate last spring. The fish themselves were in really nice shape. Females average 50.7 inches and 35 pounds. Males 44 inches and 21 pounds. Overall 47 inches and almost 30 pounds. The largest fish we had this past spring was just shy of 56 inches and just over 40 pounds. This is the second year in a row that we've had fish 56 inches or larger in our nets. So the fish are definitely getting bigger on Green Bay. This graphic just pretty much shows the average length trends in muskie over the course of the last 15 or 16 springs. The blue line is the males. As you can see, they've pretty steadily increased, although the increase is slow. There is a definite positive increase in length over the time period. Females have also increased, but their increase has been a little more up and down. We'll have a couple of good years of very large fish, and then we'll get a few years when the fish are a little bit smaller, and then they bounce back up. Not very unusual. It's good to see, though, that growth continues to be very good at Green Bay. We don't seem to have any growth issues out there for muskie. Fall electrofishing, what we try to do is we try to target fish to collect biological information and to put pit tags in fall. We try to ignore the recently stocked hatchery fish. So the two length bins that we collect in are fish over 18 inches long, and those are red bars, and then fish over 30 inches long, and those are the blue bars. As you can see, through the early 2000s, we had a pretty steady increase in the number of fish we saw in fall. This will be apparent in a few minutes when I get to the stocking slide. But this is due to the really good, consistent stocking in the early 2000s from wild rose. We're stocking about 20,000 fingerlings per year, which is a pretty good rate. There were a lot of fish out there. They were found in the Fox River. Of course, you can see the dead years, 2011, 12, 13. That was probably due to the lack of stocking, 2007, 2008, 2009, when VHS appeared in the Great Lakes system and couldn't bring muskie back to the hatchery. So that was very disappointing in those years, but as you can see, the past 4 or 5 years, we're starting to increase again. We're starting to see more fish in the Fox River. We're not seeing the high numbers that we did in the past, but to me, that's not really surprising, and it may not be surprising to you. I just don't think as many fish utilize the fox as they did in the past. We see a lot more angling activity out on the bay in fall, and not necessarily in the river. So our data kind of is reflecting our crew guys are seeing out there with most of the fishing pressure in southern Green Bay or along the west shore of Green Bay in the fall. The question was, does the Fox River cleanup impact some of our catches? Yes. It impacts our catch rate for walleyes. It impacts our catch rate for muskie. There are, or have been several years where we could not shock in areas that are typically favored by muskie because the dredge equipment was there, and it's very difficult to navigate in and out of all their pipes and dredges and everything else when we're out there, because we're out there at night. So we just avoided those areas. But yes, you're right. Dredging has impacted our catch rate.
What was the color coding on the river?
Go back one.
Sure.
Those are the different sections in the river. We have the river broken up in approximately 20 sections. We shock these sections every year. We identify them so we can tell what fish are caught in each of the sections. As you can see, the sections are variable in length. They average about a mile, but there are some that are shorter and some that are a little bit longer. They weren't picked for any real reason when we set this up 25 years ago. They were picked because there was landmarks on the shoreline that we could see at night. So we knew when we got to the end of the station. Sometimes it's hard to go by GPS and seeing a pier that sticks out there, or somebody has a big flagpole. Those are very distinctive things, and those are how we actually set those sites up. So the size and the locations doesn't indicate anything other than we shock in sections, and that's how we record our data. The creel survey continues to be a really important tool that we utilize on Green Bay to manage the fishery, whether it's for muskie, walleyes, perch, brown trout, you name it. Our creel clerks do a really good job. They're out there. They work every weekend, every holiday, and 2 or 3 days during the week. They have a morning shift, they have a night shift. So they're out there working pretty hard under generally less than favorable conditions sometimes. What we can do is take all the information they collect and then analyze that data, and that's what these two graphics show. The top graph is Musky CPE, which is the blue bars. So it tells us that the catch rate in 2018 was just under 600ths of a fish per hour. So you can do the math, it's like 1 fish every 30 or 40 hours. The red line is directed muskie effort. So this tells us how many hours people are actually out there fishing for muskie. We ask them, what were you fishing for? They say muskie, it goes on that graph. If they say, I was out there fishing for whatever and I caught a muskie, it doesn't show up on that graph. So as you can see, directed fishing hours declined through the early 2000s into the 2010s. This is probably due to the lack of stocking and fewer fish being put in the bay. And then about 2012, the directed fishing effort just took off. And right now, these past several years, we've been around 70,000 hours of directed fishing effort for muskie on Green Bay, which is very remarkable.
Where are the surveys held?
Our creel clerks go to landings.
Is this just from Bay or?
That's just for Green Bay. We have it for Lake Michigan, but I only pull the data out directly from Green Bay. So they, they obviously hit the major boat launches, Menominee, Peshtigo, Ganos Beach, all the way down here, and then all the way up the East Shore, Little Sturgeon Bay, Sar Harbor, Ship Canal, and then up into the Door Peninsula. That's where our Sturgeon Bay clerk goes. So there's probably 20 or 30 spots they go to. Did I see another hand? Okay. So effort's been increasing. It sort of stabilized. This last couple of years dropped. A lot of that has to do, I think, to the really windy falls we've had. It's been difficult to get out for a lot of people, so the total amount of fishing dropped off a little bit, but it still looks to be very good out there. And then the bottom graph shows catch and harvest. The blue bars are the fish caught, and red is harvest. So as you can see, and I know it's difficult probably in the back, there's only 2 years in which you can actually see the harvest. We know harvest happens every year. There's a small handful of fish taken. But in 2007 and last year, 2017, we did see harvest in the 20 to 30 number. Some of that is the artifact of the way the data was expanded over, or what our anglers saw. So it does look like catch is probably averaging about 1,000 or 1,200 fish per year, and harvest is about 2. It's been pretty steady from time, and right now, with the large size limit on there, it does not look like this is going to change very radically. We're going to see a lot of catch and not much harvest, which is what you all want. A brief update on stocking. Currently, we use 2 different egg sources for the fish we put in the Fox River and Green Bay. The first source is from the Fox River. I don't know how many of you have come down and watched this spawn fishing today. I know there's been a few people that have been. We set up at Fox Point, it's usually the 2nd or 3rd week in May. We set our nets, we bring the fish back to the landing. The hatchery staff is there, they spawn those fish. The eggs go to our egg collection facility in Kewanee, Zadney, and they're raised there until they're stocked out in fall as fingerlings. This has been a very successful program. It has some pluses and minuses, of course. The pluses, it's a local source. We can get those fish every year. On the minus side, those fish are from a parental stock that had a very limited genetic makeup when they were originally stocked here in '89 through about '92. So they're perhaps not the most genetically fit fish out there, but they seem to do pretty well. The other source is from the Michigan DNR. They collect eggs from the Detroit River. They hatch those fish, they raise them until they're 3 or 4 inches long. They inspect those fish, we get the health certificates, and then we take about 10, 12,000 muskie in the fall of the year, and we raise them for the next fall. So they're stocked out as yearling fish. These fish have been truly remarkable. We've been averaging around 15 or 16 inches at the time of stocking for these fish, so they have very high survival. There's pluses and minuses about this egg source. Of course, they're very genetically diverse, so they're a very strong, healthy population. On the other hand, we have to rely on other states to collect them for us. Last year, we didn't stock any yearling muskie in 2018 because in 2017 there was a VHS outbreak in Detroit River. Michigan didn't collect fish for themselves either, so we didn't stock any yearling fish. Currently, on the plus side, we have 10 to 11,000 fish destined to be yearling muskie in the hatchery as we speak right now. So next fall, we should be stocking some really nice fish.
Can you talk just briefly about the broodstock lakes and the
I will.
5-year plan? Okay.
This is our stocking history for Fox River, Green Bay, and the tributaries. It's hard to believe, but in the times that we started stocking in 1989, we've only stocked about 200,000 muskie in Green Bay. Sure seems like there'd be a lot more, but that's all there has been. As you can see from this diagram, most of the stocking is blue, which are fingerling fish. They survive pretty well because the fish we're stocking as fingerlings are 12 or 13 inches long, which is, an appropriate size to stock. The red bars, or the red portions of the bars, are yearling stock fish. We haven't stocked that many yearling fish over time, except for the past 3 out of 4 years. These are the surplus fish from Michigan that did not need to go into the broodstock lake. Some of you perhaps remember Kevin Kapuzinski. He was me 2 or 3 biologists ago. He did a study and found that for each yearling you stock, that's worth 15 fingerlings. So you'd have to stock 15 fingerling fish to equal the return of one yearling muskie. If you do the math, and we stocked about 5,000 or 6,000 yearling muskie, you do the math, that's like stocking 75,000 fingerlings. And this graph only goes to 35,000, so you'll be up here somewhere. So there's a lot of fish we put in the water in the last few years. Hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to start seeing some of those fish in the mid. Excuse me? Yes. Yes, Kevin did it from the early years of this program from this portion of the data set. Okay. I should mention, yes, sir.
So those, the red bar was
Yes.
how long are those right now? Like 25,
The last yearlings we stocked them at 16 and 17 inches long, and that was 2 years ago. They probably doubled in size, at least. There was a question about broodstock. One of the priorities of the fish from Michigan is to stock our broodstock lakes. As you know, in the past we had a single broodstock lake in Sheriff County. For a number of reasons that didn't work out. We had to back out, and we lost that inland source, which is a clean source of eggs, for us to get fish from. What we did do when we reinstituted this program is we set up 3 broodstock lakes. There's 2 in Oconto County, Archibald, and Anderson Lake, and there's 1 down in Sheboygan County, Elkhart Lake. Since 2010, we have stocked generally 1 to 3 fish per surface acre into those lakes with the Great Lakes muskie. We're hoping in the next year or 2 that the first fish become ripe, and we're going to be able to use that as a source, and we'll no longer have to go back to Michigan 2010 was a pretty low stocking year. We didn't have real good survival at the hatchery. After that, they tried a few things. They did some habitat projects in the pond, and the past 2 or 3 years, we've had really good survival. We haven't had any disease issues, and they've been putting out somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 fish. About 2,000 of them go to the broodstock lakes. The rest of them will come to Green Bay. A small number, around 500, has gone to Lake Winnebago. So we're on track with stocking here. We're starting to scale back some of our numbers. I think we're going to shoot for 1 to 1.5 per acre when we stock this fall. We don't want to shoot past the safe margin and have issues with the locals again. So we're going to start cutting back on the number we put in the lakes.
What kind of information are you getting out of Anderson Lake?
Go ahead. These are the survey results, or the planned surveys in the broodstock lake by the responsible biologist. Elkhart Lake is Addie Dutton. She's relatively new to the state. She's stationed in Plymouth. She set nets in 2018. It was a little bit cold, and they did catch a few muskie, but not a lot. She's planning her next assessment next year, 2020. We're hoping that she actually gets some right fish. Tammy Pioli in Peshtigo has Anderson Lake. So far, we have been skunked on Anderson Lake. We haven't been able to catch a single muskie. However, we have had contact with several local anglers that live on the lake, and they have caught some muskie. So we know they're in there. They're just probably not very abundant. And then Archibald Lake, the biologist is Chip Long. He's also in Peshtigo. He's done several assessments and have definitely caught muskie from multiple year classes. So things are looking pretty good in Archibald Lake. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I know someone in Anderson who said they're delicious. So.
That's not a good thing.
No.
What I'm going to do.
It wasn't the right answer.
No. One of the things that have been really interesting about me being here is the ability to cooperate with the universities and their grad students on a number of different projects. The Musky project this past year with Robert Sheffer has been really exciting. The guys work really hard. When he comes to visit, you'll really enjoy his talk. He really has a lot of information. But since I didn't know he was coming, I threw a couple of slides in I stole from his poster session. So we'll go through it quickly. Save up your questions for Robert. The goals are very straightforward. Determine the proportion of muskie spawning in tributaries or in Green Bay, proportion that return to known locations. Do they spawn once in a while, or do they spawn in consecutive years? What sort of habitat are muskies using to spawn? This goes beyond the study that the University of Michigan student did back when Dave Rowe was here about spawning habitat. And then he wanted to characterize some of the seasonal movements of muskie in Green Bay. That's one of the top 2 or 3 questions I get. Where are the muskies in summertime? And I say, I don't know, because I can't catch it. So don't ask me. You should ask one of you guys. Okay? What he did, he approached anglers in contests generally, or guides, and was able to put tags in those fish so we could track their movements in Green Bay. Did anyone here provide Robert any fish? Okay.
No, but we did get him in touch with a lot of the guides to get him set up.
Right, that's very important. I definitely appreciate your guys' help with that.
We've seen him out there, but I just wouldn't catch anything,
Right.
so.
So these are the fish that he tagged from anglers. As you can see, they were scattered about pretty much in 2 locations, southern Green Bay and then up around Daniels Beach. I had approximately 20 or 25 angler caught fish. They inserted these tags. They inserted 2 different types of tags in muskie. They put in an acoustic tag, and then they put in a radio tag. These tags were sewed. They made an incision, put them in the fish, sort them up, let the fish recover, and then release the fish out into the bay. They used 2 different methods. The radio tags are an active tracking system. You have to go out there with a boat and an antenna and look for those fish to try to triangulate the locations in Green Bay. This will allow us to get fine scale information on where they're spending their time. What sort of habitat are they in? Are they in this bay or are they in that bay? So these radio tags last a fairly long time, so the second suit that was mentioned will be continuing the work of Robert. The other tag is the acoustic tag, and these are the receivers that pick up the signals from those acoustic tags. On Green Bay, we have approximately 200 receivers scattered around Green Bay. They're in every river, 2 or 3 in each river. There are several curtains across Green Bay, either from Michigan to Wisconsin here, across the Bay to Knox, and then there's one between Green Bay and or the Door County Peninsula and Garden Peninsula. So we know are those fish moving north, if you're moving east, west. We're trying to get some large-scale movement. These tags are good for 10 years. They were able to track these fish, and using these acoustic monitors, they pick those up once a year. They download all the data. There will probably be 5 or 6 million data points on each receiver, and then they'll sort through looking for musky because there's other fish out there that have tags in them. And Robert or his successor will be able to actually track their movements. What's interesting about the tags that Robert used, the radio tags, is the company that makes them said that you could hear these tags from a plane through the ice. So Robert had DNR plane fly transects, and this is a map of his transects in Lower Green Bay where he was looking for muskie. He could do this in the summer during open water, and he's been doing it during the winter trying to find out where these fish have gone. Once they found a habitat that fish seemed to look like, they used side scan sonar to try to determine what kind of habitat was there, whether it was aquatic plants, logs, rubble, cobble, whatever. This work has been done by Point and UWGB and a lot of the tributaries. We're using that information that you get on what is good muskie spawning habitat. Okay. Once they have identified habitat, they went out there and tried to collect eggs. They did, and were able to find eggs. And they have been sent off to the lab to be tested genetically to see if they are truly musky eggs or something else. I'm sure I'll have a lot more results on that. Moving to some of his very preliminary results, and I will say they are definitely preliminary. These are the results that I picked up from him late last year. They take 56 muskie, 41 who were from anglers, 5 who were from our electrofishing boat, and 10 from the fight nets that we set that week before we spawned fish in the box. The goal is to take 4 more this spring, so we'll have a total of 60 tag muskie out there. 60% of the muskies they caught and put tags in spawn in the tributary streams, and about 40% spawned in Green Bay proper. Muskies that had known stocking locations, these are the ones that you put pit tags in at the hatchery, spawned in the locations that they were stocked into. So they do seem to have some homing, although it's not a salmon. So it's not 90 or 95%, it might be 60 or 70%. So there does seem to be some relationship where they'll come back to where they were stocked. They look for eggs at 52 sites. They had success in finding them at 28 sites, and now they're waiting the genetic testing to see if they're truly musky or not. 110 sites were searched for larvae, frame nests, larval turds, light traps, seines, and electrofishing, so they put a lot of work into trying to find larvae. Unfortunately, they only caught 2 in the Menominee River. Once again, they're sending those fish for genetic testing to verify that they were musky. They certainly look like it from their picture, but time will tell. Okay. And with that, that's the end of my talk, specifically on musky. Any questions before I do one? Go ahead.
A couple items. First off, where are we at as far as natural reproduction on the bay today?
Reproduction is very low. We find a few fish every year that don't have fin clips. We're assuming those are naturally reproduced fish. However, over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, muskie were stocked by the state of Michigan and Bay to Knox, Great Lakes muskie, and they unfortunately did not fin clip them.
So we could be seeing some of their fish.
Could be, but I think if the fish are in Sturgeon Bay area, they're probably naturally reproduced. But further north is a question. Yes, sir.
So next spring, when we're assuming that we can take eggs from Elkhart, what's the potential for raising them for stocking numbers, let's say fall of 2020 in the bay? Do we know what numbers we're looking at potentially?
I don't know. That will all depend on how many eggs we get. I'm not holding out much hope for 2020. I've been the 2021 advocate just because when the fish we stocked in 2010 were very small, not very many of them, so I'm guessing 2013 might be, or 2012, whatever the next year class was, will be the one that will get fish from. They will be raised at wild rows. They'll be divided up. Some will go to broodstock, back to broodstock lake. The rest will come here.
Let's say we're 2025, 5 years, 6 years out, it's good. I mean, are we looking at 20,000 fish a year, 25?
That would be the goal, between 20 and 25,000. They won't all be yearlings though. There will be a mix of yearlings and fingerlings.
Is there anything that we can do different to make sure that they're yearlings?
It comes down to hatchery space.
Okay.
You know, right now they're raising about 12,000, and that's pretty much maxing out their outdoor ponds for yearling fish. So 12,000 might be the max right now that we can raise. Although that may change because some of their pond space is being used for walleyes with the walleye initiative, and depending on how that goes, there might be additional ponds available. That's yet to be seen.
That's what I was gonna say, what do we have for fishery space?
All the fish that we get from Michigan away are raised at wild rows. They have 4 ponds. They can raise about 12,000 fish or so. We can raise about 7,500 fingerling at Kiwani if everything goes well. Generally, we've been getting about 4,000 or 5,000 out of this pond and a half.
So it's those 2 fish or ponds or stocking locations?
Those yearling fish that are raised at Kiwani are all stocked here in Green Bay. Because they're considered production fish because they don't have the wide genetic background that we want to put in broodstock like for future years. Pretty soon though, if we keep stocking yearlings in Green Bay, our population is going to be pretty diverse as well, and they may be able to get fish from here as well to supplement whatever we get from the broodstock lakes. Yes, sir.
How about the other non-Green Bay lakes, Winnebago, Geneva, and Rice,
Right now, the only lake that gets Great Lakes muskie is Winnebago system in Butamore, Little Butamore, Winnebago. They only get like 500 fish, and they come out of the 12,000 that we get, so they're really not taking up much of our space. And certainly the local clubs down there are happy to see them stocked, because they put in money and help for this program as well, and that way they have a local source. The long-range goal would be to use Great Lakes muskie in any Great Lakes drainage water. That's many years away. I mean, that would not only be for Lake Michigan, but that would include drainages on Lake Superior. Well, yes and no. That's what we can raise at Wild Rose right now, but we're raising all the fish that Michigan will give us. So until we have our own broodstock, 12,000 may be our max. Once we're able to raise all fish from Wisconsin, I would guess that we'd be stocking out a mix, like I said, of fingerlings and yearling fish, which would put more fish in the water. Yes, sir. That I can't tell you. You're talking to the wrong guy. I'm not the hatchery supervisor. I'm sure if we had money and I don't know if they have the space, but, you know, it's all possible. You know, the hatchery person that oversees Kiwani actually is the supervisor at Wild Grove, so Jesse Landwehr is the person to talk to, and I'm sure your club has dealt with him in the past. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
One other item regarding diversification of stocking locations. I know that you said a lot of them tend to go back to where they were stocked. We tend to just dump them at a launch, and, you know, is there any thought to maybe here or there, you know?
Yeah, and that's a really good question about asking, do we stock in all the same locations, or we try to spread them around? With the availability of fish the last 3 or 4 years, we've actually added more stocking locations. In the past, we used to stock the Fox River, the Peshtigo, the Menominee, Sawyer Harbor, and Little Sturgeon Bay. Those are our 5 spots. These past few years, we've also been stocking more fish in the Peshtigo, the Oconto, the Pensaki. You know, I'm forgetting. Not the Swamico River. Thank you, Swamico River. They're also in the plan that Dave Rowe and I wrote before he left. We also are looking for a spot in Dork County north of Sturgeon Bay. So we're trying to find a spot that would be conducive to muskie, and we're hoping that some of this study by Robert will give us an idea of perhaps where we should look in Dork County. So yes, we are trying to spread them around.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, get another question. Yeah, I was also asked to talk a little bit about pit tag readers. I understand the club has bought a few. I brought one here to show. Can you go to the next slide?
Sure.
Generally, you know, what you're going to be doing is working for me, looking for pit tags and any fish that you might catch. I don't want to mislead you. There's not going to be a high percentage of fish out there with pit tags in it. There may only be 1 or 2% of the muskie out there that you catch. That percentage, of course, has been going up every year, because when we stock yearling muskie from Wild Rose, we've been pit tagging about 20% that go into Green Bay. So we have been putting more tags out recently. What I have put together here, you can choose to use them or not. It's up to you. Is a data sheet. What it is, on the first page, there's the far left-hand column, there's a bunch of dashes. These tags are either going to be 10-digit alphanumeric, so numbers and letter tags, those are the older tags, or the 15-digit numeric tags, what we use now. So there's 15 lines here. Please don't give me any 13-digit numbers, because that's not going to help me very much. Then we'll ask for a length and a fin clip, and that's why this is up here. The fin clips that we use on muskie mostly are either left vent for fingerling muskie or right vent for yearling stock muskie. That just tells us at what age class they were stocked. In the past, there were 1 year where we clipped both vents, so there'd be a BV clip. And then I think 1 year they actually clipped the tip of the max bone. Those are very rare. We hardly ever see those. So just record the fin clip. The vast majority of fish you'll see, hopefully, will have clips. I'm hoping to find some without any clips. That's a plus, because all the fish we stock in Green Bay are supposed to be clipped. Then the date you catch the fish, and then any sort of comments. Some of these fish are going to have other sorts of tags in them, and if you can look for those tags, I'd greatly appreciate it. These long orange tags are the loop tags that Robert has used, so these fish are going to probably have a transmitter, and they might actually be worth some money. You know, if the money doesn't mean that much to you, just record the number and send it off to Stevens Point. We have some tags with these Floyd tags on. These are the same sort of tags we take walleyes with. They're not worth anything, but I'd certainly appreciate getting a call with the number. There's 2 sets of numbers on these tags. There's an address. So 2984 is our street address, 2984 Shawano Avenue. Please don't call that the tag number. We have people telling us that's the tag number all the time. Turn the tag over. It will have a 4 or 5 digit number, generally starting with 0. There are some that have, I think there's 7 or 8, 9 is the first digit. And then finally, the tags that you're going to be looking for with your pit tag readers are these. This little pit tag. They're about the size of a grain of rice. There's 2 or 3 different locations you're going to have to scan to find these. All the fish, almost all the fish that we tag here in Green Bay are by the dorsal fin, either on the left side or the right side. I'd recommend scanning both sides because they do migrate. There will be some in the belly between the ventral fins, and very few are going to be in the cheek, and that's mainly if you go fish somewhere else, not in Green Bay. All our fish are either in the dorsal or between the ventral fins. One thing I do have is on the back I have a map. It's our grid chart. It's a series of numbers. If you can just jot down what grid you caught the fish in. If you want to provide more information, just write it in the comment section. You know, Gale Beach or University Bay, whatever. You know, I don't need a specific lot, just kind of a general idea so we can know where these fish were caught. The pit tag readers themselves are pretty simple. I don't know what brand you've got.
Right here, right in the corner.
Okay. Generally, you push the button, it will start up and initiate. I'll tell you that it's ready. Okay, it says ready, so now you can start scanning. You push the button again, you hold it down until it beeps, either saying no tag found or here's the tag number. You can see what that tag number is.
900067. That's a lot of numbers.
It's 15 digits.
Yeah.
So those are really useful for us. I mean, we don't get to see that many muskies. Most of our muskies are really caught during our spring survey on the fox or fall survey on the fox. So if you're finding fish out in the bay, that'd be super useful information for us. So I'd really appreciate it if you would send us that. You can either use my data forms or one of your own, or if you have a logbook, that's fine too. But just try to get that basic information down. Tag number, tag date. Length isn't even all that important. Location is very important, and date is important. And certainly if you see something on the fish like damaged gills or hook marks on the side, write that in the comment section. That way we can kind of see if that fish ever shows up again. And with that, I have only one more thing to say. What I did is I brought some summary sheets of 2018 data from Musky. I'll leave it here. If you want one, pick it up and take it. Otherwise, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. That's all we got, unless there's any other questions. Have a great night, everybody.
Sure, you bet.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna drop the musky box. And the sun shirt. We have one on the sun. All. Sure.
Steve, what are the lengths? What's the difference between the fingerlings and the yearlings?
In length, the yearlings are averaging between 15 and 16, and fingerlings are about 13, so 2 or 3 inches, which is quite a bit for a fish. But there's huge difference in almost
What's the age difference?
about a year.
It's only 2-3 years.
A lot of difference.
Alright, sure. Okay. That makes more sense.
All right, first number for the 100 musky box. 834-856.
about your sturgeon sometime. If you ever give me data about that.
We're hoping it's fine. We're gonna keep an eye out for it. We're doing some surveys in the management this year, so I'm hoping.
I think you're reading that number wrong.
Alright, one more for, Musky.
Sure, no problem, enjoy it.
834-846.
There we go.
Well, it depends on what you're gonna do. If you're doing anything like raising the fish, that'd be great. That's all. I mean, we would take donations for gear that we want. We've gotten some recently generated for our shop. So we're actually selling pretty good.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I was just telling them, Eric, that when we buy truckload of minerals for this,
So are we using mainly minnows nowadays, or almost exclusively minnows? I know we take minnows versus pellets for a while.
and there has been some studies, recent studies on dry feed, starting with dry feed, fishing with minnows. They don't seem to grow quite as well, but cost of minnows are not where it's balanced. There's lower survival for fish, but yeah, all our Great Lakes fish.
Oh, did I?
They do
Maybe I'll take it back.
15 and 16
And I think I'm making one short.
Nice.
And you know, if you need more, just get a hold of me and I can.
Yeah, I got you down for more.
Okay, catch you later. Yeah, and also, we're always, we're in contact with academic research projects. Donated to us. Donations from other towns. So if there's anything else popping up, we'll talk with,
Dan Kowski or Dan Eisen,
yeah,
the two leads on all this stuff.
we'll talk with them. WDNR, well,
They're really, really good. They say we're gonna do this, other than the one you just mentioned, they usually just.
well, I think that was, I think it was a function for them, not really.
Right, I mean, it was a side thing that we were more than interested in trying, someone probably asked them about it, and they didn't have the money in their own budget to do it, so they asked for assistance. It's just like, Robert has gone around and asked for receivers and tags. Receivers are very pricey, the tags are $200 or $300 a piece. Fisheries research is really
Isn't it fun, is where we can establish a self-sustaining population here. That's why we encourage.
That's my goal. It's always been the goal of the plane. I mean, that's what Dave Rowe tried to set up. That's what I've been pushing for. Hoping with conservative size limits and catch release ethics out there, we're going to have enough fish pretty soon up there. We can't help but find each other. There's times I mean, when you stock, you've only stocked 200,000 fish in the bay. Wisconsin waters are really good. So that's a really low fish per acre. It would be a poor musky if this was an inland.
Oh, yeah, we know, I know.